rapture within the tribulation. And we're going to walk through the scriptures, Old and New Testament, that prove there will be a rapture, and it will happen deep within the 7-year Great Tribulations. Okay, I want to thank everybody for being at the conference and for coming and taking the time out of their precious time and being at the conference. Now, we're starting with Matthew chapter 24, verse 14. And then shall the end come. Well, let's back up before we do that. Let's do the definition of the rapture, what we're saying when we talk of a rapture. That is defined as a Christian eschatological belief concerning the end times, where all living and deceased believers in Jesus Christ will be suddenly taken up from earth to meet him in the air. And that's what we mean when we're saying rapture. All right, Matthew chapter 24, verse 14. This we're going to start. And then shall the end come, end of the last days, which started when Daniel's first beast came out of the sea. In Daniel chapter 7, verse 2 and 4, Daniel spake and said, I saw in my vision at night, and behold, the four winds of the heaven strove upon the great sea, and four great beasts come up from the sea, diverse one from another. The first one was like a lion. This happened in August. This actually happened and fulfilled was in August 8th in the year 1588, when Britain and Queen Elizabeth I destroyed the Spanish Armada as the Spanish were attempting to invade Britain in the Battle of Gravelines. So when it says, then the end shall come, well, this is the last days, and the first beast come up out of the ocean, and that was the British, and which became the British Empire, and that came out of there. They built their ships, they built their massive navy, and they started spreading out all over. And the sea that the four beasts came up out of was humanity. The sea, in other words, they came on the stage, and Britain has been on the stage. Well, Britain has been on the stage for about 500 years. And the eagle's wings, then it speaks about and had eagle's wings. I beheld till the wings thereof were plucked. And this happened in 1776, when the eagle's wings was plucked from the British lion, when the American Revolution started. And it was left up into the earth. It was lifted up into the earth and made stand upon the feet as a man, and a man's heart was given to it. This happens to the lion, not the eagle's wings. Now, it says, verse 15, and 15 in Matthew chapter 24, when ye therefore shall see the abomination of desolation spoken of Daniel the prophet stand in the holy place, whoso readeth, let him understand. Okay, so this is dealing with the third temple. When the Antichrist comes in, and if you Voice of the Prophet series that I've written, you'll see that the Antichrist is brought into Jerusalem by the wicked part of Judah. There's the majority of the Jews are good, but there is a wicked part that dominates the whole body of Judaism. And they're not very large, but they dominate the direction and guidance and management of the rest of the body of Jews, pretty much. It says, so what happens is when they bring him in, it says a few days before this happens, the glory of the Lord, which is shown above and in the first temple, Solomon's temple, it was shown at Solomon's temple, and then we're dealing with, of course, at this point in time, in prophecy, we're dealing with the third temple, and that's yet to be built. But that is built when the second Exodus is completed. The moment the second Exodus is completed, and then you have the Valley of Jezreel, where the covenant's made with all the tribes and the Christians with it, and it's in the Valley of Jezreel, and then they go from that incident, from that event to Jerusalem, and they start building the third temple. Now, don't ask me about the Dome of the Rock. I don't know where it's going to be. I don't know what it won't be on the Temple Mount. All I can say by that time. And I don't believe they dismantle it either. I think it's already dismantled or taken away or destroyed or something. Something happens to it. We don't know what exactly. And so, because it's not in prophecy. And that's why we can't say what happens to it. It says, so the Shekinah glory for the time period, now, for the time period that the kingdom is there, that's the kingdom of Zion, the kingdom of Israel. It's not the state of Israel. Don't get it confused with the state of Israel. These are two separate deals, completely separate deals. And the kingdom of Israel, or the kingdom of Zion, is going to be there for about a year. Well, it never does leave. It just goes into different fractions of it. And it's going to be there. It builds the third temple. Latter-day King David, which is what prophecy would refer to him as, he's going to be sitting on the throne, because we're trying to deal with the rapture here and not with all the subjects that the series deals with and all the subjects that if you take prophecy of the Bible in its completion, all the different things that happen in the tribulation period, and there are tremendous amounts of things happening in the tribulation period that is not known by Christians and not really known by the Jews either, not really known by the tribes. And the tribes of the 10 lost tribes, or the 10 scattered tribes, and Judah, who's still scattered in the nations. Verse 15, when you shall therefore see the abomination of desolation spoken of by Daniel the prophet stand in the holy place, whosoever readeth, let him understand. So that's what we did. That's what happens is he appears, and he appears not completely by surprise, because some point in time shortly before he appears, the Shekinah glory, or the glory that's over the temple, the third temple, that the same glory that was over the first temple, but was not over the second temple. Okay, when Jesus was 2,000 years ago, when Jesus was in the Holy Land, there was no glory over the second temple, but there will be, that glory will return over the third temple. Okay, and so the third temple, what happens is the glory leaves, like it did over the first temple before the invasion came. It leaves the temple, and it goes off. And that's how they're going to know that it's about to happen, is when they see the glory of God that was over the temple, when it moves off and leaves. So verse 16, then let them which be in Judea flee unto the mountains. This is the command for Judah, the tribe of Judah, to flee to Petra. So it says, because it says be in Judah, okay, so it's talking to the tribe of Judah, and that's the tribe that the Jews make up. You know, they don't make up the other 10 tribes. They make up the tribe of Judah, from the tribe of Judah. And so then let them which be in Judea flee to the mountains. And the mountains they're going to flee to is Petra. And that's when they go into Petra, when this happens. When the abomination that maketh desolate, which is basically the Antichrist, entering the holies of holies of the third temple. Verse 17 and 18. Let him which is on the housetop not come down to take anything out of his house. Okay, so Judah's already fled. Okay, I don't know. Maybe maybe they also get tipped off by the wicked part of Judah that tells them what's about to happen, and they realize what's going to happen. But this is the two separate deals. Let him which is on the housetop not come down to take anything out of his house, neither let him which is in the field return back to take his clothes. So Christians who are grafted into the olive tree, which is what we are, which is what Christ has done. He's grafted us into the olive tree. And the 10 tribes, which may be one and the same, but they do not have to be. In other words, most of the 10 tribes, when they come back, they're going to be Christian, but they don't have to be. I mean, the 10 tribes did not replace, the Christianity did not replace the 10 tribes. Okay. The 10 tribes are still scattered out in the nations. It's just that at their time of being in the nations, which is it's like 2,700 to 3,000 years, their time of being scattered out into the nations, they became Christian. As during that time period, most of them became Christian, but not all. We can't say that all of them become Christians. So Christianity does not replace the tribes. The 10 tribes are fulfilled with Christianity. They are, that's why so many of them, and this is what it's talking about when it says this. It talks about Judah fleeing to Petra, and it talks about the 10 tribes and the Christians. It's talking about leaving their housetops and leaving the field and not going back. They're not going back because it's too dangerous for them, because events are unfolding so fast. They do not have time, and also because their place of safety is separate from Petra, and their place of safety is in the north. We're going to talk a little bit about that. And the Jews' place of safety during this time, and only during this time, is in the south. Petra is not going to be a place of safety when the state of Israel is invaded and that war breaks out. It's not going to be a place of safety for the Jews. So, but it will be during this time. It's talking about. So it says, flee to the wilderness. It also tells us to flee to the wilderness. And the wilderness is different than where it tells Judah to flee to the mountains. The wilderness is going to have mountains in it, but this is going to be in the north. And there's a lot of other prophecy in the Bible that deals with this. So we're not going to go into that. That's a whole different teaching. But then it says, Revelations chapter 12, 1 through 6. What this is, let me tell you about Revelations. The Lord gave me a dream to explain, to understand. I'm not to fully understand all of Revelations, of course, but to explain what Revelations really is. It's like when you look and you see, like, who was the one of the people that stay, like Carol Burnett or something, that goes out into the front of the stage, in front of the curtain. And that little stage is right there when the curtain it's not been drawn yet, it's still closed, okay? When the curtain is closed, there's a front part of it, and that's what the people that don't understand or don't read Scripture, that's all they see is that. That's all they understand. And of course, you've got the multitude in the chairs that are out there in the audience. And then when the curtains part, you see the stage. And the stage is presented in a way that it all makes sense, and you understand that whatever is happening on the stage, you understand that, whether it be comedy or drama or whatever, you understand that. So that is what most people see. And that's what the Bible talks about. It talks about the events that happened in, Samson's days. It talks about King David's. It talks about all those events and everything happened. And that's on the stage. And it's called in heaven, it's called the stage of life. Okay. But that's what's happening on that stage of life. And then what Revelation does and what prophecy does is there's always this curtain that's in the back, or there's scenery in the back with a curtain behind it, which is, the curtain is beyond that is the backstage. And that's where everything goes about. Everything's happening in heaven, everything's happening on earth, everything's happening, and what's going on in hell, it's everything happening behind there, and that is the stage that Revelation deals with. And that's what shows you what's happening, not just in the forestage, or not just behind the curtains when they open in the main stage, but it also shows you the stage that's behind the back curtain. And that's why it's difficult to understand, because you're seeing all these events unfold, and the Lord has to give you wisdom in how that is set, what part of the stage that's on. Okay, that's what the Lord showed me. says, okay, now Revelation 12, chapter 12, verse 1 through 6. And there appeared a great wonder in heaven, a woman clothed with the sun and the moon under her feet, and upon her head a crown of 12 stars. And she, being with child, cried, travailing in birth, and pain to be delivered. And there appeared another wonder in heaven. Behold, a great red dragon having 7 heads and 10 horns, and 7 crowns upon his head. And his tail drew the third part of the stars of heaven, and did cast them into the earth. And the dragon stood before the woman which was ready to be delivered, for to devour her child as soon as it was born. Now, when it's talking here at this woman, this woman, Mary, the mother of Jesus, is at this point that woman, okay? And the child to be born is Jesus, he was born 2,000 years ago. And she brought forth a man-child. So that's this man-child. This man-child is in prophecy. It's dealing with prophecy, and it's a fulfillment of prophecy of the Bible. It says, who was to rule all nations with a rod of iron, and her child was caught up unto God and to his throne. Okay? And the woman fled into the wilderness. So here's what you have. You have this woman who is depicted by Mary at first, and the man-child is depicted by Jesus. Okay? And then Jesus, crucified, resurrected, called up to God, to his throne. Okay? And then this woman flees. Then you have this woman doing completely different things. Okay? Completely other things. Now this is what we call the twofold fulfillment of prophecy. There's prophecy that will be is fulfilled. The first fulfillment is in time, in history, some point in time before the tribulation period. And then the second fulfillment is, which usually is the greater, happens during the 7 years. So prophecies that you thought were done and gone in history and they were fulfilled, now they're coming back. That's the dynamic. That's how powerful and dynamic the tribulation period will be in those 7 years, because all of those prophecies replay in a different way than what they replayed in ancient history. Okay, so that's what I call the twofold fulfillment of prophecy. And so this woman who has played out in history as being Mary and Jesus, well, when she's fleeing to the wilderness, all of a sudden, we're going into not 2,000 years ago, we're going into, in verse 6, we go into the tribulation period. And this event takes place in the tribulation period. And the woman fled into the wilderness where she hath a place prepared of God, that she should feed her with 1,203 days, that they should feed her with 1,000, that's 3.4 years. So, 3.4 years into the tribulation period, all right, she goes into it. All right, that's when she flees to the wilderness. And it says, and the woman at that time is the bride of Christ. She becomes the manifestation or the symbol of the bride of Christ in that time during the tribulation period. Yes, we're not going to be raptured out before the tribulation period. You're going to go through it. Just like Noah, the ark was not taken off out of the flood, out of the ocean, or off the planet Earth. He was in the flood. He went through the flood. Okay? But there is going to be a rapture, and that's why we're dealing all of this. We're laying the groundwork for all of this for you to understand it. And it says, so this woman is the feminine that transforms from Mary, the mother of Christ, to the bride of Christ. In other words, she is the ideal feminine. Jump to verse 13. And we're going to jump from verse 5 in Revelation 12 to verse 13. And when the dragon saw that he was cast into the earth, he persecuted the woman, which brought forth the man-child. Here is an example of the twofold fulfillment of prophecy. First, the man-child is Jesus in its first fulfillment. Then is the second fulfillment during the tribulation period. The woman becomes the representation of the bride of Christ. And the man-child becomes either the delivered second Moses or the latter-day high priest. We don't know until the event takes place. Okay? And I'm pretty much expanded upon that. So we don't know the second fulfillment of that prophecy of the man-child. We don't know who that is. It's probably it's going to be one of the key players. It's either going to be the second Moses or the latter-day high priest or the latter-day King David. But we don't know which. It depends on if the second Moses and the latter-day King David are going to be separate people or they're the same person. So, we won't know until that event takes place. So, now verse 14 through 17. And to the woman were given 2 wings of a great eagle, that she might fly into the wilderness, into her place, where she is nourished for a time and times and half a time. So that's 2.5 years. It says, so she goes in there and then she's there for 2.5 years. This is the woman, the bride of Christ. We're talking about the bride of Christ. Then that woman takes on the personification of the bride of Christ. So, the woman that he might cause her to be carried away of the flood. So the Antichrist, the serpent, sends this flood. It could be a real flood. Actually, I think it's a physical, real flood to wipe out the Christians and the 10 tribes that are going up into that place. Okay? Because this is dealing with the woman. This is not dealing with Petra down in Judah. Is he sending a flood? If he sends a flood in the north, it's possible he's going to send a flood in the south too to deal with the Jews in the south and Petra. But this is what happens. This is why it's so important. And we're dealing with what he's dealing with, what the Antichrist is doing at this time is what we call, nowadays it's called weather warfare. Okay? And yes, that is a thing. Yes, it's very active, very violent. A lot of people are dying from it. And it's something, different nations, use against their enemies. And, they're very developed into it. We're well into the development of that. And that's probably what he uses, is weather warfare. So he goes and swallow up the flood with, and the earth, verse 16. But this is what's really, really amazing, really cool, is that, and as this flood comes, the earth helped the woman. It says in Revelation, the earth helped the woman, and the earth opened her mouth and swallowed up the flood, which the dragon cast out of his mouth. So the dragon uses weather warfare, okay? He uses this flood, this massive amount of water that comes up, and there's different ways he can do it, technologically or something. It'll look like magic, but it won't be. It'll be technology or something. And so he goes, and so as the flood is coming to wipe out the bride of Christ, which is going up into the wilderness in the north, the earth, because the earth is commanded, when they are offshore, when the second Exodus is offshore, the Lord commands the Holy Land that had just destroyed the state of Israel, that the Holy Land had destroyed those that had established themselves in that all through history. It destroyed them, okay? Because most of the time it's because they're in iniquity and sin, and they pollute the land, and the land takes them out, okay? Now, the Lord raises their enemies to attack them and take them out, kill them, enslave them, whatever. But it's the land that has refused them and has thrown them off. So that's what happens here, is that the Lord negotiates a treaty with the land and the tribes, all the 12 tribes that he's bringing back in the second Exodus, and he negotiates that treaty. Now, that treaty has not been negotiated yet. So that's why the state of Israel will not remain on the land. Okay? And that treaty is not negotiated, but it will be negotiated at the end, as the time the second Exodus is ending. And then the land upholds that treaty, upholds what it agrees to, and the Holy Land opens up and swallows the flood. I believe this is a real event. It's a physical event that it's not just talking spiritually, it's a physical event that the land will open up and swallow up the water, the great water or sea that is to go after the bride of Christ in the land of the north. Okay. And if another one is sent to Petra, it's going to the earth's going to open up and swallow that up too. So it's not clear in the prophecy whether it happens in both places, but we know it happens in the north. Okay. It says, because it's the remnant of her seed and, bride of Christ. And if she's representing the bride of Christ, it's the seed, the Christians. It's going to be dealing with the Christians. And although there will be Christians in Petra too, because you've got to understand that some of the Jews are going to convert, are going to come to the Lord as Christians, okay, fulfilled Jews. They call themselves fulfilled Jews, and they're going to come, and their families are going to be attached who have not come. And so when they leave, they're going to choose to go with their families or go with their kin to Petra. And so that's why, and we'll deal with that also, about these that are Christian, that are Jews, that are down in Petra, and what happens to them. And prophecy in the scriptures, in the New Testament, prophecy deals with them. So it's really cool. And we'll get into that in just a few minutes. And so it says, the dragon was wroth with the woman, verse 17, and went to make war with the remnant of her seed, which keep the commandments of God and have the testimony of Jesus Christ. That's why we know that these people, that it's in the north. It's going to deal with the north, okay? It's going to be specific to the north. The prophecy deals with it because it has the testimony of Jesus Christ. So we're still here. So we're dealing with something that's saying when the rapture does happen, there are no left behind saints. So the rapture hasn't happened yet, okay? There's no such thing as left behind saints or left behind, okay? No one's going to be left behind. The saints are going to go. The Christians are going to go. I interchange saints and Christians the same. They're the same. So this is those that have the testimony of Jesus Christ. So we're dealing with them too. This palace in the wilderness, because of other prophecies, this place in the wilderness, because of other prophecies from the Old Testament, also known as the Hebrew Bible, is Mount Hermon. All right, so it locates it. It's going to be in the mountain. In that mountain, it's going to be Mount Hermon, Hermon. So Daniel chapter 11:24. He shall forecast his devices against the strongholds. And he's talking about the Antichrist. He goes, more than one. In other words, we know the Jews go to Petra. Everybody knows that sometime in the tribulation period, the Jews go to Petra. All right, because there's tremendous persecution against the Jews. And so they go to Petra, but Petra is not a safe haven until this event takes place. So if they think they can be safe in Petra, they cannot be safe until this happens, and this is in the tribulation period, the 7-year part of it. So it says, when does the tribulation period start? The tribulation period starts when the angel in Revelation says, Babylon, Babylon. It's destroyed. He cries out, "Oh, Babylon, Babylon." It's destroyed. And Babylon is destroyed. And who is Babylon on the earth? America. So it's going to happen. The tribulation starts at the destruction of America. All right. And there's prophecy to back that up. So Daniel, it says these strongholds. So it's more than one stronghold. So there's more than one stronghold. There's two strongholds. There's going to be a stronghold in the north, and there's going to be a stronghold of Petra for the Jews in the south. So Joel chapter 2, verse 15 and 16. Let the bridegroom go forth of his chamber, and the bride out of her closet. So when the rapture takes place, the bride is in a safe place, but she's being attacked, but she is in safety. And it says the bridegroom go forth of his chamber. His chamber is in heaven. It's talking about Jesus. The bridegroom is Jesus, and his chamber is in heaven. And the bride come out of her closet. So the bride's got a place of safety, and this is Joel. This is this is deep into because it said 2.5 years later, after she goes into this place, 2.5 years later, she's coming out because the rapture is taking place. And it says, the bridegroom goes forth of his chamber, and the bride out of her closet, and the place of safety. Which closet in the Hebrew and the Strong's, you look at Strong's 2646, it's a canopy, a chamber, a closet, or defense. So the bride is defending. She's a warrior bride. She's not just gorgeous. She's a warrior bride. Okay. And she is defending herself there also. She is in defense, because what God brought, think about it. What did God bring when he took the 12 tribes out of Egypt? What did he call them? He didn't say these helpless people that I'm bringing there. He didn't call them slaves. He called them a mighty army. He called them his army coming out of Egypt. Okay. And so what is the second Exodus going to be, coming out of all the nations of the earth? When the two diasporas are ended, the Assyrian diaspora, almost 3,000 years, is ended, and the Roman diaspora, which is not ended. 1948 was not the end of the Roman diaspora. When the Jews come out of the nations, when the other tribes, the 10 tribes, come out of all the nations, it's a worldwide exodus. So he calls her, in prophecy, dealing with the second Exodus, he refers to her as his army. It is an army. She is a warrior bride. So that's not being taught. It's not being taught anywhere. If there is being taught, it's being taught in just a few places. But the church needs to know this. The church needs to hear that this is huge. This is important. And this is what's going to happen according to prophecy, biblical prophecy. From the root word, also the closet is from the root word Strong's 2645, to cover, to veil, to increasingly protect. It means that she's going into that closet. It's called a closet, okay, and say the King James. It's called a closet. So she goes into that closet, that place of protection, for a period of time, and then she's going to come out of that closet, okay? She's going to come out of that place of protection when she's raptured out, and that's how she comes out of it. She's not going to leave with the Antichrist and his military forces trying to attack her. She's not leaving that closet until she's raptured out, and that rapture, it comes at a opportune and very perfect timing. Only God knows when. We don't know when. We know that the day and the hour that the Scripture says we do not know. Okay, but we do know the time period. In other words, in the tribulation period. Petra, Zephaniah. Yeah, so we're dealing with Petra. Here it goes, Zephaniah, the prophet Zephaniah, chapter 2, verse 3. Seek ye the Lord, all ye meek of the earth, which have wrought his judgment. Seek righteousness, seek meekness. It may be ye shall be hid in the day of the Lord's anger. So the day of the Lord's anger, or the day of the wrath, of God's wrath, happens in the last 2 years of the tribulation period. So the last days started 500 years ago, and it ends at America's destruction, which is the daughter of Babylon, or Babylon. Sometimes it's called daughter of Babylon. Sometimes it's called Babylon, and the second fulfillment of it. And when America is destroyed, that's when the tribulation period, the 7-year tribulation period, starts. Okay? And then, in the last 2 years, after the rapture happens, which will be in the 5th year, sometime somewhere a little bit in the 6th year or something like that, because it says 2.5 years. So, when they go into that place, it depends on when they go in. But when they go into that place, and then when they get raptured out, from that point on, for about 2 years, less a month, because it says he will cut the time short. It's cut short by 30 days. You get into the prophetic clock that outlaid in the books and stuff, and you understand what I'm talking about here. When you see that in the last 2 years is the great and terrible day of the Lord. Now that is what we do not go through, is the wrath period where God pours out his wrath upon the nations, upon the inhabitants of the earth. And that's when they're running into the rocks and hiding and so forth. Okay, so one more dealing with Petra. This is Malachi chapter 3, verse 16 and 17, King James Version. Then they that feared the Lord spake often one to another, and the Lord hearkened and heard it, and a book of remembrance was written before him for them that feared the Lord, and that thought upon his name. And they shall be mine, said the Lord of hosts, in that day when I make up my jewels, and I will spare them as a man spareth his own son that serveth him. And speaking of the Jews in Petra. So he's going to spare the Jews in Petra, okay? And he has plans for the Jews in Petra when he comes back. So, and we'll go into that in just a minute. So, let's go back and see what the conditions of the earth at the end of World War III is. This is at the end of World War III, okay? So, and that's going to happen, that'll happen about a year and a half to 2 years into the tribulation period. So it goes, Russia's military shrinks, okay? At the end of World War III, when the second Exodus completes and they're back in the Holy Land, all the tribes and Christians are back in the Holy Land. Now there's still going to be Christians in different nations and stuff, and there's a part A and a part B of the whole second Exodus. And we won't go into that here, but it will end when Messiah ben Joseph, who the Jews call Messiah ben Joseph, but he's the second Moses, when he ascends Temple Mount and he ends World War III, okay? And that happens in a very miraculous and very dynamic way. God does it. That's when the hailstones that were created that Job speaks of, that was spoken to, that's spoken in Job, they appear, they come, all this stuff, fires coming down from heaven and stuff to deal with the end of World War III. So it goes, now what happens? Because the world conquering force, which is Gog's army, which is Gog is a Russian leader, which I believe that's Vladimir Putin, is Gog in the last days. And when that army is defeated, so what happens when that happens in the Holy Land? Because they're defeated in the Holy Land. It says, number one, death in the Holy Land. Okay, that's what happens to them. The Russian military shrinks because of the troops they send to the Holy Land is completely wiped out. Absolutely, completely wiped out. And those in Europe give up their post and return to Russia. So they've already gone into European nations, the Baltics, the Scandinavian countries. They're in all of those countries. They're ruling in those countries. They're controlling those countries. And when the destruction happens in the Holy Land to them, then they go back, leave those countries, and go back to where the prophecy in the Bible says they're going to be. And I'll tell you this in a minute. It says number 3 goes, many of them quit the military, return to civilian life. A large group of Russian people move en masse to Siberia, where the Antichrist comes out of hiding, when the Antichrist comes out of hiding in Germany. So the Antichrist is going to go into hiding, fear for his life. Not at this time. This has already happened, actually at when World War III breaks out. And America's destroyed and London's nuked and all this kind of stuff is happening. But it happens, and the Antichrist is scared, is fearful for his life, and he flees all the way back. He flees from Britain, and he goes all the way back to Germany. And the Rothschilds have to protect him in Germany from what's happening, what's unfolding in the world and stuff. And so but when this happens, and then he comes out. When World War III is ended, he comes out of this hiding like a little rabbit, and he is scared to death. He was been scared to death in the time of the hiding, but then he comes out and he starts acting like he's brave and like he's something, and he in Germany, and then he starts moving across Europe, taking the countries back and stuff with the people that align themselves with him. So there's a pause put on the Antichrist, and that pause is when he is scared for his life in Germany, and he's hiding in Germany. So then he comes out of that. He goes, many Russian Empire Christians and Chinese Empire. So there's a Russian Empire because Gog is their new czar, which that's Vladimir Putin. That might have practically, I think it's already happened, but we don't know for sure. But they're not letting the rest of the world know that. So we believe that that's what's going to happen. So they're going to recreate the Russian Empire. I think they've already done it, and it's just going to get bigger and bigger, and stronger and stronger. So the Russian Empire, and then the Chinese are going to overflow this. They're overthrowing it right now. Communism. People might not want the West to know this, but they're overthrowing communism right now, and they might produce something for a brief period of time that's in between communism and the royal emperor of China taking the throne again. So, and that's what happens. The Chinese Empire recreates, it reforms because the last emperor survived and his descendants survived. And also the czars were not all killed. They weren't killed where they're saying what the communists said they were killed. They were not killed. Most of them lived their lives out, and they produced a offspring. And that's who I believe Vladimir Putin is. That's why you see the czar flag that can only flown when there is with a double-headed eagle. That Russian flag can only be flown in when the czar is present, and that's why you're always seeing that flag whenever you see Vladimir Putin. Watching the news and stuff, and you'll see when you see Vladimir Putin and that flag a Russian flag is there. It's the regular Russian flag that doesn't have the eagle, and then it's also another flag. There's two flags there with the eagle, and that's because there is a bloodline of the Tsar present. And that's why the flag can be flown. So Zechariah, this is the Russian Empire Christians. There's many Christians that are in they're going to be in Russia. And there's Chinese Empire Christians. There's many Christians. Because when they release themselves from communism, well then a lot of Chinese Christians are going to come into Christianity because they see, especially after the second Exodus ends and it ends World War III, they're going to see for a fact that that's the way to go. And so, and the Chinese emperor is not going to stop him from doing it. He's not going to, I don't know if, we don't know if he's going to be Christian or not, but he's not going to stop him from doing it because anyway, and if you want to know more about that, it's not just in the books, but even deeper into that topic and subject is in, the Czars, the DVD I have on my website that's called the Czars. And the website is 2exodus.com. So, anyway, in Zechariah 8:23, dealing with this, it says, thus said the Lord of hosts, in those days it shall come to pass that 10 men shall take hold out of all language of the nations, even shall take hold of the skirt of him that is a Jew, saying, we will go with you, for we have heard that God is with you. So they're going to say, people are going to start seeing what's happened when the second Exodus ends, and they're going to say, hey, this is the way to go. And they're going to see the power and the might of God and the hand of God that, really is, it was shown 2,000 years ago, but it really hadn't been shown like this, until the first Exodus out of Egypt. And it's going to be shown again like that, even greater It says, he says, the prophecy of the second Exodus says it's even going to be greater than the first Exodus. So they won't talk about the first Exodus anymore because the second Exodus is going to be so much greater. So, but we're dealing with the rapture here, so let's not go into all of that. It says, the former United States Empire, East Coast, and the West Coast are no more. Okay. We're talking about at this time. It says, on the East Coast up, and the time that the Chinese Empire is ruling, and the Chinese and Russian both invade America, but the Chinese are what the Russians have given America to the Chinese. That's who they've been giving it to. And the former United States, it says, the empire, it says the East Coast and West Coast are no more. On the East Coast up to the east side of the Appalachian mountain range, there is radiation. So everything from the coastline on the East Coast all the way to the Appalachian mountain range, on the east side of the Appalachian Mountains, there is radiation. Okay, everything's dead there. It goes on the west side of the Appalachian Mountains to the east side of the Rockies is converted farmland. Whole cities demolished. All the concrete is torn up and removed. On the west side it says it's removed. All of this is for farmland. They need cattle grazing land. They need farmland. They do not care about the cities. They don't care about the cities. They're not going to tear up and destroy all the cities because they need a place to live too. But they don't care about the cities. They don't want the concrete. They don't need the highways. They don't need all of this. Now, whether they're going to leave one highway to travel from one place to the next, we don't know. But most of this is going to be demolished. It's going to be taken up so they can plant crops and they can raise cattle. They can graze cattle. And that's what, between the Appalachian Mountains and the Rocky Mountains, that's what the Chinese are going to do. And the Russian part that's going to be with them, just to oversee it. It says, on the west side of Russia still has a presence in the United States at this time. Most of the Russian troops that invaded America go back to Europe because they have to conquer Europe. That's when Europe gets conquered, after America gets conquered. And they have to, there will be parts of Europe on the border of Russia and the Scandinavian countries which will be conquered before America. Okay, because they're in preparation to launch the attack against America there, and they need those ports, and they need that deep water ports, and they need the submarine equivalent of all those coastlines and stuff, so that we don't know where they're coming from. So, on the west side of the Rockies to the new coast, there is radiation. So, on the west side of the Rockies, you got to understand that when the attack comes against America, a good portion of California collapses into the ocean because the nukes are nuked on that. It sets off the faults that are in, and there's tremendous amounts of faults, the San Andreas fault and others that completely collapse the coastline of California. Now, all of that is not collapsed all the way up to the Rocky Mountains, but the radiation of those nukes that have gone off and stuff is in that land, and it's going to be pushed out to sea, and it'll be pushed probably north by weather manipulation, weather warfare that the Russians have control of by that time. And so it says China controls all New America, which is transformed into farm and ranch land. And we don't know what they're going to call America. They'll probably call it, they might call it New America. They might call it, I don't know, New China. Who knows? I don't know. We'll know at the time when it happens, when they announce that. It goes, Imperial China controls everything from the west side of the Appalachian Mountains all the way to Russia's empire's eastern border, but may not have control of India. So what you get is that China is going to control everything from the west side of the Appalachian Mountains, and you go all the way over there, and they're going to skip over the dead land of the what we call the western part of America and stuff on the western side of the Rockies, and they're going to go and they control everything in the ocean, Hawaii, Australia, New Zealand, all of that, all of the islands, all the way up to China. And they're going, well, all the way up to the Russian border, the Russian kingdom's empire's border. China will control everything up to that. Gives you a layout of that. I'm sure that this is shocking many people. I'm sure it is. But you want to get ready for what's about to come. You want to get ready for the tribulation period. You want to get ready to go through it. Those of you who the Lord has told that you're not going to be raptured out before, because the rapture doesn't take place before the tribulation, and the Lord has informed that you're going into the storm, you're going into the flood waters, you're going into the rush that's going to happen at that time, that when the tribulation starts. It says you're going into it. You need to know this, okay? This is not something you want to ignore. You need to know what's going to happen, and you need to know how the events are going to unfold and how they're going to be laid out. Don't take this lightly, because it's not to be taken lightly.
For further information on this topic, please go to our website, 2exodus.com. God bless you. This is Dan Griffey.